The survey that I have chosen to create is a survey in regards to our church and how our volunteers and our leaders are interacting and trying to get a better communication so that we can find out where there is room for improvements. So a couple of Bible scriptures before we go on is Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary at doing what is good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. 1 Peter 5:2 is be a shepherd of God's flock that is under you, watching over them not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve. And Jude 23, strive to save others, snatching them out of the fire, and showing mercy to others with fear, hating even the clothing having been stained by their corrupted flesh. That verse right there is probably the verse that our pastor preaches the most, that we as a church need to strive to snatch souls out of hell. But oftentimes, when we come into leadership, we get burnt out. So the survey is basically trying to get a feel of where our church leadership is and where our volunteers are and where we need to make changes. So let's go to slide number 1. Why is it important to know the state of the flock? Well, so we know those who we need to encourage, and then so we know those who need a break. Just because they need a break doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. We just need to make sure that we are feeding our flock. Then the next reason is so that we can find a purpose, so that we don't get burned out. Too often we confuse volunteering with a job, and we don't want that. We want them to know that they're important when they show up, that every person matters, that every voice needs to be heard, and so that we can improve together as a congregation. So the first question we asked is, when volunteering on a Sunday morning, what is your biggest frustration? So unfortunately, the biggest response was 15 people saying that they were unappreciative. And then another 5 people that said there wasn't enough staff on site. So between feeling unappreciated and staff on site, I'm sure that the staff on site is probably a huge part of why they're feeling unappreciated. They didn't really have a problem with the parking too much or that the service was too long. The next question that we asked is, what area of the church do you believe needs the most improving? I was kind of shocked by this because we are a small church, but we are a modern church, but they are telling us that they would like more audio and media. So that's something that we will work on, and we have continued to work on. And then we asked them, how true is this statement? I am likely to stop volunteering within the next year. Sadly, 53% have said that they are extremely likely, with another 8% means that more than half of them are leaning towards not volunteering within the next year. I will say that if I had to add questions to this survey, I probably would have surveyed the age of the people that were responding to this, because there are youth involved, there are youth going to college, and then there are older people that have done their time, and it's time for the younger generation to step up. So if I had to change something about this survey, that's one thing that I would have changed. The next question that I asked is, how often do you find yourself attending a service rather than volunteering? For myself, I've experienced this, and I think it's most important that as a church congregation that we make sure that it is not the same people volunteering 100% of the time, 100% of the week, but that if there is 2 services, they're getting in for at least one of the services, or if there's only one service a day, that they are at least getting in twice a week. So 37% said every Sunday, and then another 20% said a few times a month. Though those numbers are high, on the downside, what else is high is it's almost split, that 26% of them are saying not at all. That's also a little bit worrisome, because if these people are feeding into our children, feeding into our youth, our teenagers, our young adults, where are they getting fed? If they're feeding into our kids, and what are they feeding them? And what are they planting seeds of? That's my biggest concern. So this is something that we as a church definitely need to look at. The next thing that I asked is, how do you feel about approaching and greeting new visitors before or after service? This actually was encouraging to me, because I felt like most people don't like to greet people. We've come up with a new rule that 3 by 3, you find 2 people to be accountable, so that there's 3 of you, and each of you go and find 3 people so that we are reaching all of the visitors that we can each week. So everybody's goal is to have 2 partners, 3 new people. I didn't think they were too happy when we announced this, However, by the reaction of this, I'm kind of happy with it. I do have to question is what would their response have been just a few months ago before we started pushing this further and pushing the Jude 23 scripture. So I would be curious to see how much that has impacted it, or if this will change with seasons, especially around the holidays when we are consumed by visitors. So that would pique my curiosity. The next question I asked is, how do you compare the following? I often think about visiting other churches so I can receive a break from leadership. So I guess I shouldn't see it as too bad that Always on My Mind and There Are Other Churches are very low in the number, but considering that 30% are saying kind of, and even a higher number combined with Always on My Mind and Crosses My Mind. So it tells me that personally, I think that as a leadership, we are not doing what we can to keep people. Personally, I would like this to see a 0 on the first 4 and 100% on the bottom. So when congregation and members are considering other churches, it's really time to step up our game and figure out what's going on. And maybe we're not involved in their lives like we should be. And then the next question I asked is, how important do you feel to the church family? So this one confused me a little bit, and I'm going to say that it's probably because of the wording I used. How important do you feel to the church family? Because one of the other questions is how important do you feel to the leadership? So it tells me that the leadership is who is letting these people down. Because to the church family, 53% is feeling important. And then the next level down is 15%. So the majority are feeling important to the family. So now it's time to sit back and say, as a leadership team, what are we doing wrong and what areas can we improve? And maybe that's something as simple as we've started breakfast for the volunteers. Maybe we need to also go with a lunch since they're there late, cleaning up as well. The next question is, how valuable does the church leadership make you feel? This is the one that I was discussing. So 19 people do say valuable, but the majority of people do not even feel like the leadership recognizes them. A huge number feels like that. So that's something that as a leadership team now, we need to sit down and say, what can we do better? And if our leaders aren't reaching out to our leaders underneath them, then how do we expect them to reach out to new people? So that's something I would want to sit back and look at. And then, what do you believe your calling is in life? So I kind of typed in a lot of the answers that we got here. Some of them are repetitive, but you can tell the younger generation was baseball and graduate, doctor, dentist, art. Then you have those that are just wanting to change how they are, or maybe keep how they are, being happy and being humble, showing up to the church. There's some that are still praying about it, and then there's some that actually say children's ministry, loving people, showing kindness. Looking at the man in the mirror, that was a big one. So I think that if we had to sit back and evaluate, I wish I would have also looked at what age was giving the answers. I'm curious to see how many of the young people are looking at the answers, such as focusing on growing and looking at the man in the mirror, reaching the lost. I'm wondering what age group that was. Why did you choose volunteering? Some of these are good answers. Some of them kind of make you sad. My grandma got me started. It keeps me busy. I want God to use me all he can. It's fun. Somebody gave question marks. They don't even know why they're doing it. And I have to wonder if that's somebody that we recruited that maybe just doesn't want to do it. My wife makes me... something else we need to sit back as a congregation is, are we using our volunteers too much? Because the fact that somebody said for their family time is volunteering is also a little bit disturbing. So we need to make sure that they're having time with their family as needed. And then let's look at all of the responses that we have. So the first thing is the negatives. There are too many people that are feeling unappreciated. They're frustrated. We need to step up our game in the audio and video department, especially with the mega churches in our area. A lot of the kids are going there because of the lights and the sounds, but we want them to be fed as well. So we need to be a shepherd of our own flock. Very few are happy at volunteering. So how can we make that funner? We've talked about a volunteers banquet. We've talked about days out to Cedar Point. So that's probably something we really need to focus on. We just need to step up, making them feel a part of the game and making sure that we're recognizing their needs. Um, you know, there's a girl at work that says, be kind to other people because you never know what their struggle is. And the same thing is true with volunteers. Just because they're in leadership doesn't mean they don't have problems. So that's definitely something that I would want to take a look at. The stuff that we need to work on is only half of our people are going into service to be fed. So with that being said, that's probably part of why they're not feeling appreciated, because they're probably not having people fill their shifts so that they can go in. Then I said shifts as if it was a job, so we need to look at stuff like that. And only half of our people enjoy greeting visitors. So do they understand their purpose? Do they understand Jude 23? Why are only half of them enjoying greeting the visitors? But the best news is the majority of the people know they are important. Now it's time for us to just sit down as a team, figure it out, and make them start feeling important. So with that being said, that is the end of my slideshow. Thank you.